Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the DCI. This is their part number 945. The 945 is made up of a top bolt and a bottom bolt. Each of those bolts can be purchased independently from the manufacturer, and they are occasionally ordered independently. They are, of course, ordered as sets as well. Ordering them independently might be because you obviously need to replace one of a set, or you're installing a top only with a bottom firebolt. Generally, you could do that. They also sell it that way. So what the 945 is going to be a top bolt, and we're going to define all of these parts. That's your self-latching top bolt that has a trigger mechanism that will allow you to retract the unit. Okay, also has a safety feature on it, whereby if for some reason the bolt cannot make contact with or seat itself in the strike itself, it has, like, I wouldn't say it's a clutch mechanism, but it does have an override feature. Okay, if this cannot completely activate, and if I hold that, it will of course still retract even though it's not latched, only to protect the hardware itself until the mechanical problem is solved. Then there's the bottom flush bolt, and that's literally just a bolt. That's a latch, so that's going to be self-latching. Okay, every time you close the door, the top's going to latch. Then this is a bottom bolt, and this bolt, every time the active door closes, it will force the bottom to drop down and then secure it at the bottom as well. So what happens in standard operation of a 945 is when you obviously have a pair of doors. When you open the active door, your bottom bolt is no longer bolted to the strike in the floor. You can then just reach up, hit the trigger to retract your bolt, and then open the inactive door. This 945 is specifically for wood doors. There is, of course, a set for steel doors. They're different in construction. And the reason they're different in construction is because the way by which you need to prep the door is inherently different to accommodate the hardware when it's a steel door or a wood door. It's not common, it's not correct to use a wood door set of automatic flush bolts on a steel door. Pardon me. It's not correct to use a pair of flush bolts, automatic flush bolts like this, on a wood door when they're intended for hollow metal doors. Okay, the wood door style is conducive to physically prepping the door, whereas installing hollow metal intended bolts onto a wood door, while it can be done, is not the best practice way to do it, because prepping the hardware is exceptionally more involved. So there is extended information down below. Let's go over it. The 945 is a 905 top along with a 940 bottom. They're UL listed for use in wood door applications. Patented, non-handed with free floating cam. Both of them feature the ability to not be forced to work should they both will have a clutch style mechanism on them. That could be what they mean. Minimal force to activate the bolt. Manufactured with an override feature to prevent damage to the door or the bolt. We've demonstrated that. Positive high temperature latch. Being made of steel, there is no function of a thermal activation in this. Engineered to function in high frequency areas with minimum maintenance. Trim packages are available to reduce inventory levels. What they mean is you have the top and bottom bolts, you have the plates that go with them for a wood door prep, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then you just have your trim packages. This happens to be 32D stainless steel, and we'll pull that out and we'll look at that in detail. This isn't the satin stainless steel finish, made in the United States, Michigan, in fact. This is approved for use on 90-minute doors for up to 4090 leaves. a single leaf can be up to 4090, is ANSI and BHMA compliant, conforms to positive pressure standards, and will include an ANSI curved lip strike. It will have a strike in the header that will have a lip on it that will allow the door just to be pushed closed, and it will be latched. Or I should say the door closer to close it, to allow it to latch. Available in US 3 polished brass, US 4 satin brass, US 10 satin bronze, US 10B oil rub bronze, US 26 polished chrome, 26D satin chrome, US 32 polished stainless, US 32D satin stainless. So the rest of the tour of the material, this is going to include, being a wood door style, it's going to include this bracket that you're going to need for installing this, okay? And it's going to look just like that. A couple of screws will hold the bracket on. So your installation, or I should say your preparation in the door itself, is just a large L-style prep, okay? This bolt will, of course, be adjusted prior to installation so that it has the proper projection and the proper engagement into the strike, okay? And that's what the top looks like. The bottom is literally the same sort of arrangement, except that it's, of course, going to look like that when it's installed in the bottom of the door. And we're going to pull up the template and the documentation and take a look at it as well. Okay. Steel doors would not use a wood door version. There's no need to have these really big long plates on a steel door, and we'll talk about that when we get to the template. We'll include a couple of dust boxes as well. This is just galvanized, wipe coat galvanized steel, so that when you install this material, okay? You definitely want to have a dust box installed because you don't want the particulate of the fire-rated door creeping out through the preparation itself. That fire-rated door is very, well, it's certainly going to be some sort of particulate, whether it be a gypsum core, you know, a core that's intended for use in fire-rated doors, or it's particle board, or it's, you know, structural lumber. You don't want any of that coming through any of your preparation. So using the dust boxes will be the proper way to go about installing that material. And that's what they look like. They are they do come for both top and bottom units. Okay, and the templating is based on the preparation, I should say. The mortise is based on prepping for those. Now let's take a look at the documents below this video. Okay, so here's the item that we are looking at, and over on the right hand side, template, then product information, an older version, at least compared to what would be considered the more current version. By the time you're seeing this video, this could all look differently, and likely will. The documentation that's included with the paperwork is, I'm sure, the most current version, I would think. Actually, it's neither. It's dated December of 2015. So let's take a look at. I kept this here because I like archival information. This 2009 version. I want to be able to see what it looked like in the past. Let's take a look at the current version. This is the product catalog paperwork. Okay. This is an overview of what we've already talked about. It shows the 845 version for the steel doors, and then the 945 version for wood doors. The inherent problem with using the steel door version on wood doors is prepping that long hole that is incredibly close to the edge of the door, and that's why they're not used on wood doors, even though they can be and are used on wood doors. They are meant for steel doors. You can, in your mind's eye, imagine how you would prep this L angle shape in the edge of your wood door at the top and bottom. And you can prep this edge, this 6 3/4 by 1 inch wide edge plate. And you can prep the top of the door for the strike, but how do you drill that long hole for that rod from the top of the door or the bottom of the door to the body itself? Well, it can be done. It's just not easy on a wood door. It's certainly not easy if you don't have the right tools. So this will be an overview of the extended description information. Let's look at the 2009 version. It's just an older catalog version is all it is, so we won't spend any time on that at all. Now the template. The template is actually the document that is with the paperwork. I said earlier 2015. It's the template that we're referring to. Okay, 905, 945, 905, 9BFB. Okay, so this template is going to work for, and by the way, when they meant cam, they mean the bolt sticking out of the edge of the flush bolt, I've realized. They mean this is the cam in your bottom bolt, here and here. So the installation instructions that are included really only show you the top bolt preparation, although the bottom is the same. Okay. This is going to show, because you can buy the bolt as a 905 top bolt, as a 940 bottom bolt, and their preparations are identical. When you buy it as a set, it's a 945, 905, 945. You can also buy the 905 top bolt with the 9BFB, which is a bottom fire bolt. And that's illustrated here. That's not part of this video. But in addition to the top bolt, you can install a fire bolt at the bottom. That means you are installing it in lieu of the 940 bottom bolt. You can install in a pair of fire-rated doors the top constant latching or self-latching bolt itself, skip the bottom bolt, and install this fire bolt. This fire bolt is installed into the inactive door as it's shown, and then there's a plastic cap that's installed into the active door. When the temperature hits something in the range of the mid 200 degree Fahrenheit, this is going to shoot out of here and burst through this plug and secure the two doors together. That's how they work. The applications that use this, that combination of top bolt and bottom bolt, would be a hospital, because they don't want anything pierced into the floor. If you have the typical 940 bottom bolt, that means you're going to have a strike into the floor. They don't want that at all, so they'll go with this fire bolt arrangement. Now, let's just talk about the installation of this material into the door. What we're seeing here is we have the strike preparation, which we'll go over in a moment. We have the edge of the door, the elevation of the door, and then the top of the door. So the important things to look out for here are as follows. On the template, they give you the mortise dimension, how long of a mortise you'll do in the face of the door. They give you a mortise for the width of the plate. It's right here. It's 1 1/32 of an inch. They tell you how far to make that mortise in the top of the door, which is 6 1/32, and then 1 1/32 wide. It is indeed a bit of a challenge to see that information with all of the other dimensions given, and it is very helpful. You need to have all of these dimensions, there's no doubt, to know exactly what you're dealing with. But this is a template, so you do have to review and scrutinize it to get the dimensions that you want. So you know the length and the width, of the edge preparations. Now you need to know the depth. It's 2 inch here, and that will incorporate that dust box. It's 7 9/32 of an inch down to the bottom of that prep from the top of the door. And then the only other thing that you'll do is for the 1/8 of an inch of the faceplate of the bolt, it's just an 1/8 of an inch thick. So why don't you leave this file open, and let's pull up, let's take a look at me demonstrating the flush bolt in my hand, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so just quickly, if you still have that template open, what they're saying here is, And what they don't give you is the actual size of the material. And that's why I had a client ask me the other day, you know, I see the mortise prep on the template, but I don't know how big the plate is. Okay, yeah, that's a very fair question. But the mortise prep is not the same as what the faceplate prep is. It does need to breathe a little bit. And here you go. So what we're looking at here is, and by the way, the answer to that question is back in the product catalog data. It does indicate there somewhere, it should. Okay, they do. In the 2009 version, they show a dimensional drawing sketch where they show this plate is 8.5 inch overall height. They show it as 1 inch overall width. Okay, so you did have to dig for that. So the template paperwork that we're looking at will be interpreted as follows. They want an 8 and 17/32 overall height here. Well, this plate's 8.5 inch. They do want it to breathe a 32nd of an inch, which is 30 thousandths. 1 and a 32nd. Well, that plate's going to be 1 inch. They want you to have it just slightly larger than that. That's where that comes in. Now, let's put the top plate on just to illustrate what we're looking at. This will already have been bolted together by the time that you put the faceplate on. But when you look at it, now you're seeing that you're going to have that 7 and 9/32 of an inch from the, I'm guessing from the bottom of the plate here. That's not how I would draw it. It's hard to tell, but let's just measure it. From the top of the plate down to the bottom of the body, they wanted 7 and 9/32. Sure, okay. So basically 7 1/4 inch. And that'll give you enough room to breathe. So you're going to make that prep down far enough to get into this area, but don't get close to the screws. 7 1/4, 7 3/8, 7 3/16. You know, it doesn't matter. It's going to fit. The template calls out 7 and 9/32. They also tell you to do it 2 inch deep, and that would make sense as well. That'll give you clear to get your dust box installed everywhere along. Then they're telling you 6 1/32 on the top of the door, and the overall width of that plate is basically 6. It's not bolted together, so it's a little bit loose, but 6 inch. And then that width, of course, again, they wanted 1 1/32, and that plate is 1 inch. So you're making this big L prep with this large notch. Now, when you go about mortising for this, what I would do is I would make my big body prep first. What they're not telling you is how wide, well, they are telling you. They want you to make that 1 1/32 wide prep all the way 2 inch deep. And you can, well, you're going to have to do that. Sometimes with a flush bolt, you can make that body prep a little bit narrower, but this hardware comes all the way to the outside of the prep. So a 2 inch deep prep, 7 and 9/32 basically from the top of the door down. 1 1/32 wide, again, 1 1/32 wide, 2 inch deep, 7 and 9/32 all the way down. Perfect. The only other thing you have to do now is run that 1 1/32 over to the 6 1/32, 1/8 of an inch thick. Same logic down here. Just extend it down from 7 and 9/32 down to 8 and 17/32. And then you'll have a complete prep. Do your deep prep work. You'll use probably a plunge router for that, and certainly a template. Then after that, you'll finish it off and do your exposed prep. I like to do the deep stuff first when I'm removing the tool from the edge of the door. I don't want to nick anything, so I try to do the finished work always last. And that's what that looks like when you're going to prep for it, and hopefully that's relatively simple enough to do, and I believe that it will be. Let's take a look at the strike plate, as they mentioned earlier. There's actually going to be 3 plates in here. There will be a top strike plate, there will be the bottom strike plate, and then there will be the rub plate or the scar plate, which I don't see them mentioning on the installation instructions. Okay, the top strike plate, that's a T-strike. We would call that a T-strike. If you use your imagination, you can see why we do. 2 3/4 tall, overall height, I should say. Okay. the overall width, about 1 7/8 or so. These strikes are measured from the center line of the screw to the edge of the lip. That's called the lip length. It's about 1 3/8. That's how strikes are measured. They're not measured like this. They're measured from the center line of the screw. So, you know, how far from the center line will you install this? They don't give us that sort of dimension, but they don't need to, because the question will become, what is the center line of your strike? Okay, so you've got a pair of doors. You can see that there is a reference on the top of the unit from the edge to the center line of the bolt of 3/4 inch. Okay, so let's say that you have 1/8 of an inch between your two doors. So 3/4 inch plus a 16th, a 13/16 needs to be the center line of your frame to the center line of the strike. So what we would simply do is strike the center line of the frame, okay, or I should say the center line of the header, on the header between the two doors. What's the center line? You could have an unequal pair, so you have to go to the center of the two doors. We would locate that on the header. We now know that the center line of the strike needs to be 13/16 over, assuming 1/8 of an inch margin, to get to the center line of the bolt. Okay, so that's how that's going to end up working as well. You'll be able to mark that off. That would be for your steel frame manufacturer. They will know where to do that. You'll provide them, if you're having them manufacture doors and frames, whatever the case might be, that's how you're going to determine where to locate that. There is let's take a look at these screws a little bit closer. And before let's take a little aside from the review of the strikes. There is a reference on the template. On the left side, there is a rectangular box, door face delamination. Optional by others. Drill a 3/16 of an inch hole, 3/8 deep, in location shown on both sides of the door. Tap holes for 832 machine screw. Install 2 each 832 by half flathead machine screw. So what they're referring to is this. On your doors, okay, there's a hole here, there's another hole here. You have just mortised out 1 1/32 of the door, and if you have 1 3/4 door, you only have just less than 3/8 of an inch on each side. So that prep is very thin, and what's been witnessed to happen, and I've seen it myself, is that it tends to flare out there a little bit. The two layers of door skin open up. So a way to combat that is to drill and tap a hole into that, to tap that hole, and then run a very small screw into the face of the door on both sides. That's what they're referring to, and it's because that prep that you've created tends to flare out a little bit, and it does happen. I've seen flush bolts installed with those screws, and because I know what it is, I realize, oh, someone actually took the time to do that. People never take the time to do that. It's a maintenance issue years down the road. But in my opinion, a proper installation requires those screws because they do flare out. And people will not want to specify wood door style bolts for that reason alone, because that preparation does flare out. So that's what that reference there is to. We'll scrutinize the rest of the template in a moment. We have our bottom strike. You're going to get a couple of plastic anchors to install that as well. It's probably 2 1/4 wide. Yep. By 15/16. Okay, that's just for the bottom bolt. Is what that's going to be for. Then you're going to get your rub plate or your scar plate. Again, not called out on the template at all. What happens is, where you're going to use this Okay, I see. So our template online does not have page 2 where it is called out. So by the time you're seeing this video, page 2 will be added. It's right here, okay? And they want you to install it on the edge of the active door, as shown. So what happens is this. Your inactive door is in the closed position. It's latched at the top because of that self-latching top flush bolt. It's not latched at the bottom because your active door is still open. What happens is the active door comes to close, and it's going to hit the cam. Apply this plate to the door so that this curved lip is what makes contact with the cam. Okay, that's where that's going to go. That will go right between the two doors. And without this installed, you can expect irregular operation from the door. And of course, scarring and damage to the door. That will happen immediately. So you'll definitely want to install the active door strike. Okay, let's get this added and take a look at it. Okay, so I've scanned the 2-page installation instructions. Page 1 is the same as what we were looking at before. However, here is page 2, and page 2 calls out that active door strike. Okay, shown on the edge of the door. So this is obviously a left-hand reverse active, or maybe a right-hand active application, the way it's shown. The dimensional properties of it. Also shows the bottom strike, which we've measured earlier. Gives you, more dimensions of the preparation alone when it comes to just mortising it. So page 1 was a challenge to look at because it gives all the dimensions. Page 2 is a much better way to review this, because it only gives you your mortise dimensions, is what I'm driving at. Okay. Now let's take a look and scrutinize the rest of this paperwork. We've talked about the top strike, the top of the flush bolt or the bottom fire bolt if you're using it. Page 2, the bottom strike is seen here. The dimensions, the active door strike, then just the mortise information for going about to mortising the material. So that covers everything that's on the templates. Now let's continue with the review of the product itself. And then just to finish the dimension of what that active door strike was, to verify it, they have it at 1.25 inches tall. And overall width they give us as 1.75 inches, indeed. Stainless steel to match in the finish. You're going to get plenty of screws, wood screws, to get your top plate installed down to the door. You'll need 3 screws here. You are going to use on the face of the bolt itself there will be machine screws that will hold that together, here and here, and that all just bolts together. So those 3 wood screws go down here. 2 of your machine screws will go in the face here. Then you'll use this combination wood machine screw thread up here at the top. You will use the same combination screw here for the active door strike. Same for the top strike. Same for the floor strike. Possibly with the plastic anchor. Okay, so plenty of these for your top and bottom plates. Plenty of these for everywhere except the machine screws when you are attaching your plate together here. Nothing in this corner attaches to the edge of the door here. it's secured here by this screw. Okay, and indeed it's very much all included here. That wraps up this video. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the DCI products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. This material is, of course, labeled and listed, so there is absolute visual evidence on the hardware itself, which is required by code, that the hardware used on a fire-rated door is all fire-rated. This bears the physical label. Under the duress of a fire door inspection by the authority having jurisdiction or whoever is inspecting the fire doors, which is code to be done annually in 4 occupancy types. Generally, you don't want to have to be pulling hardware off a door to see the label. You would have to pull the, in certain instances, you have to remove the hardware, like in a door viewer, you'd have to remove that. This has a very discrete UL and F symbol, so that you don't have to remove anything from the door to be able to see that. It's on both of the faceplates. And an inspector is going to be looking for that. Why? Because it tells them that this hardware has been tested. They say it's up to a 90-minute rating on a 4090 door. It's been tested and found to pass that sort of test. And the ability of the manufacturer to apply that label to the hardware and that stamp to the faceplate is a result of having passed that test. So be sure to look for the proper fire-rated material when you're doing that. I'll link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the DCI products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. The name DCI is synonymous with many things trim and auxiliary hardware related. They have a full complement of flush bolts of all types, manual, automatic, self-latching, etc. Obviously bottom fire bolts. If you are looking at bolts like this, you probably need to think about a coordinator as well, maybe a carry bar, maybe door closer mounting brackets. To touch on those topics briefly, the coordinator, you've got a pair of doors obviously, okay? The coordinator is going to let the active door close first before the active door will be permitted to close. Why would you need that? Well, between your two doors there's some sort of hardware applied, like an astragal, that would, if you open both doors up and let them close, who's to say that they're to close in the proper sequence? That inactive door has to get closed first, and then the active door needs to close behind it. So you might need a coordinator. If you're using a coordinator with parallel arm mounting brackets on your closers, you might need closer arm mounting brackets to allow you to compatibly fit those parallel arm brackets around a coordinator. DCI supplies those as well. A carry bar would be used in an instance when you have a pair of doors and you have exit devices. You will have a surface vertical rod on the inactive door. You'll have a mortise or possibly a rim device on the active door. And a carry bar is when you hit the active door. There's the latch bolt of the exit device on the active door is going to be making contact with the inactive door. If you push the active door, the inactive door will be pushed open and along, but the carry bar is what is applying force from the active door being pushed to the inactive door to get that to open up with you as you do it together. You don't see those often, but in hospitals, you see them. They're there. And that sort of combination of two types of exit devices. Mortise on active, surface vertical rod on the inactive, open back strike, very commonly seen in those applications as well. So be mindful. Self-latching bolts like this are just part of what you might need for a complete installation. And DCI helps with everything. I don't think they sell carry bars, but if they do, it's in their catalog. Real nice folks, real easy to work with, simple and straightforward, predictable, prompt, professional, reliable. Call them up. Thank you very much. Bam. It's happening. So very simple, and I appreciate that. I send as much work their way as I can because of how easy and simple they just make the process of getting hardware delivered. You might also know their name under the Pan-X. They have a relatively unique exit device system that DCI sells. And if you see their name, if you see the name Pan-X, that's a DCI product. You can check that in their catalog. Any questions on the 945 set of flush bolts or any other DCI product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.